Well, good morning, everybody out there. Thanks for joining us for another Facebook Live. Hi, Ray.
Hi, how are you?
Doing all right. Today's Facebook Live is a little different, as you can tell. Ray and I had a talk at, what was it, 5:30 this morning.
Yep.
Uh, Yeah, I'm not feeling so well. However, I wanted to make sure you all are important to us, and I want to make sure we're bringing this content to you. It's important to me, it's important to Ray, and so we're pushing through for you
Yep.
guys out there in Facebook world.
Yeah. I tell you, Brianna's a rock star. So her throat's not doing real good, but she figured it out. And so we're coming to you live from our very own home studios and want you to do a little bit of the talking. So make sure you get involved on chat and kind of give her a break. And you're probably going to hear a little bit more from me. So hope that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I certainly appreciate it. That's what good teams do, right? We pick each other up. So uh,
Dream work.
that's right. That's right. So today's topic, Ray, we kind of prefaced this last week or 2 weeks ago on our work-life balance. We're talking today about time management. And, I'll tell you, I will own it that this is not my forte. I train a lot on it. However, I'm also still learning the skills myself related to this. And I think when I start looking at time management, some people are different. I think everyone looks at time differently.
Yes.
I know, go ahead. I know for you, it's a little bit different than maybe how I look at it.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And when you think about how time is defined by people, sometimes as we were talking about it yesterday, some people really define time as time itself. They look at a clock, a minute is 60 seconds, an hour is 60 minutes, and they really define time as time. And when we were having this conversation yesterday, it was interesting that you define time by the task.
That's right.
So you use your calendar or your schedule by how many tasks you can fit in to your day. And we kind of looked at that as different. And then even within that, I use time by the clock. But then even when other people who use time by the clock, a minute might even look different. So I want to give you an example of that. I used to have a former director, and when he would come into my office or even when I'd step into his, and he'd say, "Oh, hey, do you have a minute?" Of course, to me, a minute, well, honestly, a minute to me is like 30 seconds. I move at the speed of light. In my household growing up, my mom's motto was, get fast or get lost. She just, you were going to get left behind if you didn't get busy. And so I learned to move quickly so I didn't get left behind. So he would come into my office and he was like, "Hey, you got a minute?" And I'm like, "Oh, of course, come on in." And he'd be there for like 45 minutes. And so, I'd be sitting there like rocking back and forth in my chair, like, "Oh my gosh." And we kind of learned to adapt a little bit. And we had a conversation about, a minute is like really 30 seconds to me, and so we kind of laughed about it. But, understanding how people see time is also important in understanding how people value their time. When we hear the old saying, how do you spend your time? And thinking about time like money, right? And really using that phrase as it's meant. You spend time like maybe you spend money. And you wouldn't let somebody just reach into your wallet or your pocket and take money out of it. So why do we let people take our time? We really need to value our time like we might value our money, right? And choose wisely about how we choose to spend our time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's kind of fun. I wanna pause for just a quick second, and we're gonna build off this idea, but I want to go to the chat because I did post a comment in there saying, thinking about this idea of how we all kind of envision time and how we operate differently.
Awesome.
So if time were a train, all right, where would you be? And so you'll see the responses in there. I will tell you, I'm usually the one chasing the train. I'm usually chasing the train. And that's simply because you're right. When you mentioned tasks are so important to me, I will sit on something until I get it done. And I can look at the clock and think to myself, well, I really probably should go because I know it takes me, X amount of time to get ready or X amount of time to get to work. But I need to complete this task. And so it becomes painful because I'm typically either on time or late chasing the train. So how about for you, Ray? Where would you be if time were a train for you?
I would either be already on board because the phrase that I grew up hearing, get fast or get left behind, or I would be waiting for the train. Um, Typically overall, if I had to look at my system overall, I would be waiting or already on board. Um, I think in general, um, I don't want to use somebody else's time to wait on me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really want to be respectful of that. Um, Now, if I realize, and I have a very good, and we'll talk about this a little bit more because I think this is also part of the strategies of managing time is something called time sense, SENSE, having good common sense, but having time sense is really understanding how long it takes you to do something, right? And honestly, that just takes experience. And sometimes the either the more awareness you have about a task, or just the more experience you have doing that task. If you've just been more years on the planet, or the more often you've had to do that task, then the more experience you have with that task. And so understanding, oh, it takes me 10 minutes to mow my yard. Actually, I've got a little tiny postage stamp yard. And then really knowing, oh, it doesn't take me all day to mow my yard. It takes me 10 minutes. And that's what we call time sense.
Right.
So then really understanding, I do have that amount of time to do something. And it doesn't get overwhelming in your head when you have that time sense. So I'm more task or time driven, where you're more task driven. So then I'm either on board or waiting.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point in the sense that, for you, it is kind of that respect. I don't want people waiting on me. And I've certainly, I've felt that before in a lot of ways that I need to be more cognizant of my time sense. And I think when it comes down to it, a common language when it comes to time management for all of us really comes back to controlling yourself with the time you have.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's it, because all of us are going to have these different ways of looking at time. So what's the common denominator? How do we all make sure we're taking care of each other and we're being productive, getting work done? And it really comes back to just managing yourself.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect. There are times where I'm going to be chasing that train. We're all there once in a while. But the idea that time management is about managing time or managing the clock, that's false. And I think that's where sometimes we get off. And that's why we might think that this is a really hard concept. What makes it hard is the fact that it's not about managing the clock. It's not about managing time. That's the most stable element in our universe, right? Is the sense of time. What's hard about it is us, right? That we are that imperfect entity. And it's about that self-discipline. Like you said, it's about calling yourself off the task because it is 10 minutes till, and it takes 15 minutes to drive to that location. right, to drive to the train station. So it is about self-discipline in knowing I need to stop what I'm doing in order to go take care of my family, right? Or, it's time for that date with my husband and I need to go get ready, even though this task isn't complete or, whatever. So a lot of it, not a lot of it, all of it has to do with self-discipline and managing self, because that's the only thing you control in this planet is, right? Control the
Yeah.
controllables.
And I think I mean, it ties very well into what we were talking about a couple weeks ago with work-life balance, because we talk about control in that as well, and how do you kind of regain control of your life. And I really believe that time management is a big piece to that. Is once we're able to recognize that it does come back to that self-discipline, and really in being intentional about identifying what priorities will get our time, we're going to feel more in balance, and we're also going to feel maybe more productive and not always be saying, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time. Time, you're right, is finite. You're not going to get any more. There's 24 hours in a day.
Right.
And so what do we do with the time that we have? And I certainly think it goes back to priorities.
Yes.
And
I think those are things you for yourself need to decide what those are. And they'll change. They'll change over your life. Right now with a new family, your priorities have changed than they were, 2 years ago. As an empty nester, and my priorities have shifted. Becoming a grandmother, they've reshifted, and so setting those priorities. Nobody should tell you what your priorities are. And I think that sense of control and are coming from you being able to make your own decisions. And that's what's beautiful about this. When you feel most in control is when you're making those decisions for yourself. And I know Melanie talked about setting those boundaries. And that's when you're going to feel most in control, when you're establishing those and when you're holding those boundaries and when you're finding that voice that says, you know what, I need to say no to that, right? And so establishing those boundaries, establishing those priorities, and then holding yourself to those and knowing when to say when and knowing how to say no, right? Hey, thanks for inviting me to that Pampered Chef party, right? Or whatever it is. And, we've got a kind of a good fallback in 2020 where we didn't have any of those things and everything was a catalog online thing. But, just being gracious about saying no, and knowing those limits. So setting your own priorities and then holding your boundaries and establishing, those routines that help you with that, is another great way to manage your time, I guess, is, establishing those routines. That's another great way.
And I think when you speak to that idea of priorities, and being able to set boundaries, and one thing that I think a lot of people fall victim to is the idea that you can't say no, or that you don't want to upset somebody or disappoint somebody, and I fall into one of those categories. And so this is something I've really had to work at, giving myself permission to say no, giving myself permission to set those boundaries, and being okay with it. And I think that that's where, again, you kind of build up this level of self-confidence that maybe you've never had before, when you're taking back control, when you're setting those boundaries, when you're truly doing what you want to do with the time that we have here on this earth. So
again, if you consider time like money, then it just kind of shifts that sense of value in your head,
right.
And you're not just driving down the highway throwing dollar bills out the window. So if time is valued that way, then you're a little bit more cautious about, is that worth it? Am I willing to spend my time on that? I'm going to think about that, right? And so just like you would, what's that product on the shelf? Is it worth, would I buy the name brand product, or would I buy the store brand product, and you're making those decisions and you're being cautious. And so just kind of using that time wisely, based on what your priorities are, what your limits are, what's your capacity. And that money metaphor is really a valuable tool that I found when I'm thinking about those priorities, when I'm thinking about those boundaries. um, you know am I willing to spend my money on that? Am I willing to spend my time on that?
Absolutely. And I really appreciate the idea of being flexible and understanding that priorities will change. Some, common things with age, obviously, with new developments. Like you mentioned, I have a baby, and that's obviously a new part of my life now where my priorities have shifted in some way. But there's also, I think, kind of sometimes those sporadic moments where you just need some time to for self-care, and I can remember, I bring this up because one of the most empowering moments I think in my life wasn't too long ago, but it was for the first time I sat. One thing I'd always wanted to do was I wanted to be an MMA fighter in the cage. And Ray's familiar with my background. I wrestled in high school, and so the next step always was kind of MMA. How do I get in the cage? And for me, that was something that always got pushed to the back burner. Always something that wasn't as important, wasn't something I felt was as needed. And it finally got to a point where I realized I have to invest in this, because it was that little thing in the back of my head, that kept pushing me forward, saying, when are you going to pick this back up? And I wasn't getting any younger. And so taking the time, and what I did is I was very strategic about it. I let my whole family know, here's going to be my focus. I'm training to get prepared for this event, and this will be my focus for the next 3 to 4 months. So my evenings, no one gets my time in the evenings. It's dedicated to going and training. On my weekends, everyone needs to be respectful that if we're going to go out to eat, I'm going to always choose healthy places because I'm cutting weight. Like, it was such a self-discipline process just to be able to do that. But at the same time, it was self-discipline in the sense that it was the first time I said, I'm doing this for me. And I allowed myself that opportunity. And from there, oh my goodness, it was like the floodgates just opened, because I felt more confident and comfortable. And I realized that people weren't upset about me setting those boundaries or me saying no to things, because I was open and honest with them about why I was doing it and why it was important to me. And I think that really is, again, understanding that those priorities will shift, they'll change with just general factors, but at the same time, you get to choose what you do with the time you have, even if it's something crazy and chaotic, like going out and wanting to train for an MMA fight for 4 months. Do you, and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Be okay with that.
I had heard a quote one time, and it said, I don't know, or I don't remember who said it, so I apologize for that, but it said, time flies, but you're the pilot. And I thought, oh, because we always hear, oh my gosh, time's just flying by, we feel that out of control sense. But then the idea, yeah, but you're the pilot.
Right.
And I thought, oh, right, I get to fly this thing wherever I want. I can fly it into the side of a mountain. I don't want that. I have control of this thing. And so if that's the case, then I need to get control of this thing. And again, that's when you feel the most empowered, right? When I'm making those choices for myself. So that requires some planning. And one of the things about this self-discipline is, and I really do this, is I keep everything, and of course I thought we were going to be in the office this morning, so it's sitting on my desk waiting for me, but I keep everything in like a little, in a notebook. I went to our Tuesday morning store, which I love, and I bought one of those really pretty little journal notebooks. It's a spiral bound, just an empty journal. And that's what I keep all of my lists in. And it's pretty. It's something I love to carry, and it's small. And I keep all of my to-dos, all of my notes, all of my thinking in it. And every evening, I write down what I'm going to start with the next morning. And this is what I call kind of parking downhill. And the idea is this is how, like, if I just let off the parking brake, I'm immediately already in motion. I don't even have to put on, the gas. I'm already in motion. And I start all of my to-do lists with a verb. So I don't just say, like, email. I will say, like, respond to Brianna's request for whatever. So I always start my to-dos with an action word. Respond to, or prepare this, or rewrite whatever. And that's what I call parking downhill. So when I'm writing that, I give myself the action I need to take, right? Call whatever. So start your to-do list with a verb. All right.
Actionable verb. Yeah. Yes. I can't stand those implement and finalize and all of those.
Absolutely. So I end my day by starting my next day's list. So whatever I didn't get done the day before goes on to my list of the morning after. And then during the day, if people come in and they're like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? Whatever. I look at what I'm already got going on, and then I figure out, where does that fit? I always also, and Brianna, you're really good at this, so you kind of keep me on my toes about this, but you're really good about saying, where does this fit? Like, is this something you need right now? Or is this something I can do for you tomorrow or next week? Or, you're really good about figuring things out because you run on deadlines, being our lead marketing person, and you're very driven by deadlines and tasks. So you're really good about figuring out where things go. So I kind of followed your lead about, okay, where does that go on my list? And then I decide, does that need to go on Friday's list or next week's list? Or is that a drop what I'm doing, get it cranked out right now? And then I can add to my list, or I can start the next day's list. So I kind of like start and keep things going, and then I plan for the next day or whatever. That saves a ton of time. So you need a to-do list. And people and mostly men, think, oh, I don't need to write that down, right? But research has proven, they think they can hold it in their mind. And what happens is it actually takes up mental space, because we're constantly having to remember what it is we need to remember. And it occupies space. So go ahead and just write it down. There's no shame in that, right? Go ahead and write it down, so that it actually will get done. And we know that even if you have 12 or 15 things on your list, and I know you don't like this strategy because you think it all has to be done if it's written down, but it doesn't. That you're more than likely going to get the majority of those things done, even more so that if you just write one thing down.
It's true. And I will say that I am definitely a to-do list person. I operate off of those frequently. I think what happens with me sometimes is if I have too many things on there, it becomes paralyzing to even get started. But at the same time, if I have too many things on there and I don't get them all accomplished by the end of the day, and I have to pull it over to tomorrow, then my concern with pulling it over to tomorrow is I feel like I didn't achieve today. And so I think there's kind of two variables to that, right? Two different kind of ways of looking at it. And there's no right or wrong way. It's just understanding what works best for you. And so I'm very strategic, which is ironic because I'm not strategic at all. But when it comes to my to-do list, about putting only the things that I know I can get accomplished for that day on there. And then maybe I have one for tomorrow where I just kind of have expectations that for what I need to be looking at for tomorrow. But that's my routine. And you mentioned earlier that one of the strategies is really important is establishing those routines. Absolutely. If people know that that's how you operate and you consistently operate doing it that way, then people know what to expect. And so I think, one of a good example, I think of our team is I've mentioned several times, I'm not a morning person typically. And I know that you and Dewey do a great job and are very strategic about trying to do like a late morning then if we have a meeting or something, because that's kind of what works for us. And so being able to let people know what those routines are for you, because in the afternoon is my best time, to my power hour. I like to crank out marketing stuff. And so I do my blocks. I do that schedule every day, just kind of what my blocks are going to be then, and what it looks like, looks like day to day, but also weekly. We got comments coming in, Ray?
Yes, I'm so excited. We've got Nathan. He's talking about some of the things with lists, and hopefully, you are right. Think about how lists can work for you. And so Brianna was talking about, she likes the list idea, but she uses it strategically. And that's great. You can color code. So anything that's on your list that may be in, green, that's a today thing. If it's in blue or red, maybe that's an in the future. There's codes, there's X's or arrows. Arrows going to be, it's on down the week, but it's written down, but it's not a today item. So really think about how you're going to use a list for those futures. So Nathan was talking about how he's going to use lists and ways to remind him. And he's in the tech world.
Yeah.
So there's lots of irons in the fire. And of course, he is he's our person that he runs on putting out fires, and he might have a list of his own, and then I email him and he's got to drop what he's doing and solve my crisis in the moment. So he's always at running like a fireman to putting out crisis. Yeah, so we love Nathan. So yeah, figure out in the list world, how will I use that best? And whenever you can routinize something, so I'm going to use the example of like your morning routine, figure out what that looks like. I pick out my clothes the night before. I set the alarm on my coffee maker, so it's piping hot when I get ready for it in the morning. I kind of just get an idea of what my lunch is going to be, so it's all together and ready for me. I have a time sense of what I'm, how long it takes me to get ready. I mean, get that routine so you don't even have to think about it in the mornings. Brianna's not a morning person. I can be at the office by 6:30, dressed and ready to roll. But by 2:30 in the afternoon, I'm done. I'm done, and honestly, I'm in bed with a book by 8 or 8:30. I know I'm old. It's horrible. But I'm just older, and that's just my circadian rhythm. So know that about yourself, so you know when your power hour is, right? And then we try to have our meetings 9, 10-ish. That gives her a little bit of time to get in and kind of get the mojo going. And I've already ramped up and kind of re-ramping by 10 o'clock. We've on our second flow kind of what's going on. But be also very aware as we think about kind of circling back and ready to take any of your questions. But be very aware as you think about managing time and managing yourself. Be very aware for you of what those time thieves are. And don't let people, like money, don't let people steal from you. Don't let them thieve your time.
Right.
Come up with those very courteous and graceful ways of saying no and no thank you, and let me get back to you on that. Don't just give away your time. It's precious, right? And you value your time, right? So be aware of what time thieves look like for you and find ways to minimize those. I get it. And especially in Nathan's world, those things come up. And it's just going to happen because we live in an imperfect world and we're imperfect people in that imperfect world. But don't run your life by time thieves. And so, and that can be projects and it can be people, but you know, you're in control, you're the pilot. So figure out what that looks like for you and figure out ways to minimize those things.
And I think I also I want to add to that, because some of my biggest time thieves, and I think that this might speak true at least to a lot of my friends also, is you become so, we're always in motion, it seems like, as human beings now. Our society pushes us to go, 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 go quite a bit. And so we tend to need more time to veg, is the best way to put it. And unfortunately, some of that can be a time thief. You know, and I'm not saying that there's not a time and place for it. However, it was quite alarming to me when I had updated my iPhone, and it gave me my first screen report where it told me from that previous week, how much I had been looking at Facebook. And I love you, Facebook. We're on here. We appreciate you. We appreciate being able to do these events. But I recognize maybe that wasn't in alignment with my priorities. You know, obviously, if I'm sitting there looking at that for 2 hours every evening, what am I spending time with my son? You know, and so it is quite an eye opener when you sit and you think about, again, how much am I spending time in that veg area, and whatever it looks like for you. You know, some people might like video games or watch movies or all of those different things, and we need that occasionally. I'm not saying we don't, but just be cognizant of how much time you're dedicating to it.
Right. When my kids were little, you know, it was no TV at dinner. We made sure every night we sat down as a family and had dinner. And I know that's kind of an old-fashioned thing. You know, then it seemed old-fashioned even then, and that was back in the 90s. Now I had once a week, I have all my kids and grandkids over for dinner. And, you know, now it's no devices at the table. And for the littlest ones, it's no toys at the table. And, you know, if you get up from the table, my grandma's rule, and they call me Guy, you know, Guy's rule is, if you get up from the table during dinner, your plate's gone. And so, you know, it's really hard for my littles to stay seated because they're, you know, still kind of little, but they're going to learn, you know. That's just what happens at Guy's house. So no devices, no toys. And if you get up, your plate's gone. So they're like, and of course they always want dessert because we always have dessert at Guy's house. So, you know, those are just boundaries, and they'll learn that, you know, they'll learn those expectations. So it's okay to set those rules. Okay.
Absolutely. And like, give yourself grace, give yourself permission to be able to do all of those things. Yeah. So, you know, the idea is when you truly start spending the time doing what is most important to you, I think that you'll see some of those other areas, those veg times and those kinds of things, maybe they'll dissipate a little bit, because you're gonna feel, just like we talked about last week, we talked about really achieving and enjoying, right? When it comes to work-life balance, same thing is true with your time. If you're achieving and enjoying the ways you're spending your time, then you're doing it right, and you're not gonna have that need for maybe the downtime as much, because it's already intertwined into what you're doing.
Yeah, it builds that momentum, and you feel empowered, you feel in control. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to pause and check again and see, do we have any other comments that have come in or any questions as we get ready to wrap up here?
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay. All right. Well, I think what we were going to do, and we hope that you're still on with us, and we'll at least give us this piece of it in our comment section. We want to know, what are you interested in learning more about or having a chat on the next Facebook Live that we do? So we'll give you a couple minutes while you're thinking about that to go ahead and write the comments in. We're hoping to be bringing the next one here in a couple weeks back to you live from our bunker. If you're not
moving, so yeah,
we are
in a new location.
Yeah, we will be. And here soon, we haven't released the launch date yet. However, I will tell you, it will be soon, we will be launching our podcast hosted by Missouri Training Institute. We bring in extra guests as well who are experts in different areas of workplaces and training and all of those different things. So if you're not familiar with our mailing list, I have put the comment or the link to subscribe to it in the description of this event. Please go ahead and subscribe to that, and we will make sure that you're getting all the updates about when that launch occurs, including the name of it, how to find it, so on and so forth. I'm really excited about it. So let's see, any other ideas or thoughts coming in? Looking at my comment section here.
Connecting with our team, and she's working from home today, so we are too.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for the idea. We're going to see how we can kind of take some of those and make sure we're giving you what you all want, and we'll then do that with we actually have done a training, I think, on that.
That would be a good topic.
I like it. Maybe there we go. Is that the next one, Ray?
It might. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right, I like it. All right, so our next one then, thank you, Rebecca, for the idea. We will do it then, how to stay connected with your teammates while working from home if you're still in that environment.
Maybe we can make it like a hybrid, those that are, because we might have both. You might have people in the office and some still working from home, and prioritizing things. Yeah, we can talk about, Nathan, you work in a world that's not only important, but also urgent. You kind of work in that hair on fire quadrant a lot, important and urgent when it comes to priorities. So, because you got to drop and go whenever people buzz you.
Yeah. I don't know if I could do his job. So again, we are so thankful for you, Nathan. Well, we're thankful for everyone that has joined us today for this Facebook Live. Again, bringing to you a little bit different today, but we're still excited to have been able to provide it. We hope you found the information from today's training good and that you can use it. I'd love your feedback. And so if you wouldn't mind either sending us a message via Facebook Messenger or sending us an email at mti@missouri.edu, just letting us know, giving us feedback on how these sessions have gone or if they've helped you in any way. And we'll keep moving forward with them then. Excited about our next topic here in a couple of weeks. And in the meantime, we hope you all stay safe, stay healthy, take care of one another.
Yep. Go be great.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.